So our Sunday visitor author, Michael, joins us to talk about his book titled Black Catholics on the Road to Sainthood. Michael, thanks so much for being with us today. How are you doing?
Pleasure to be here. Doing great. Thank you.
How's Indiana treating you?
Well, we're doing well in the midst of a very early hot summer.
Yeah, we're feeling the same. They're saying we've been 90 for, I think, 6 days in a row, but now they're saying tomorrow's 70, so it's getting better.
Praise God.
Now, your first book was to explore the lives of 6 black Catholics from the United States whose causes are under formal consideration for canonization. What are some of the examples of holiness that these 6 men and women demonstrate for us?
Well, yes, as you mentioned, this is the first book to bring all these stories together, so it is important in that regard. I'm very humbled that I was the one that could do that. As anyone who's on the path to sainthood is a model of faith, hope, and charity, all those who are under consideration for canonization also have their own special virtues, which we see in other lives too, but they particularly show them forth. So there is a spirit of generosity that you see in figures like Pierre Toussaint, who was from New York City. He was a precursor to Catholic charities organizations in the United States. You see the spirit of self-sacrifice of Father Augustus Tolton, who was the first black to be ordained a priest from the United States. And he endured a great amount of racial prejudice because of that. You also see a great amount of perseverance in these folks, particularly in Henriette de Lille, who was rejected from at least one, perhaps possibly 2 religious communities of women, but persevered and didn't let that know that she heard from those convents preclude her from sharing the love of Christ as a religious sister. A lot of virtues in these people, and a great blessing for the Church in the United States to hold them up as witnesses.
Michael, what made you decide to do a book on these people in particular?
Well, in the midst of all the racial turmoil that we were experiencing last year, I think that all of us were probably wrestling with what can we do? And we all have our own gifts and talents. And I've long admired and loved these 6 individuals, and I thought maybe it was time to make their story more known throughout the Catholic community as a way, one way, to overcome the racial prejudice that we experience even in our church. And the U.S. bishops in their pastoral letter on racism encouraged the spread and devotion to these individuals. So I'm just trying to respond to that in my own way.
You know, there's always excitement around the canonization causes, the various groups that sponsor them. But these 6 people in particular overcame some super intense challenges. And one of my favorites is Julia Greely. She was known as the Apostle of the Sacred Heart, one of my favorite devotions, and perfect for this month of June. So share with our audience a little bit about Mrs. Greely.
Well, just like Father Tolton and Pierre Toussaint, Julia Greely was also a former slave. And so she certainly had a great amount of difficulties, of course, in her life. She suffered the physical effect of that by a drooping eye that she received from a beating. But she was never trained in any kind of education. She couldn't read or write or count. When she gained her freedom after the Emancipation Proclamation, she was able to get out to Colorado with a family who employed her, and she converted to Catholicism and fell in love with the Catholic faith there in 1879. And she immersed herself into the life of the church immediately. She was a daily mass goer. She was very devout in terms of her fasting. People would often ask her, what are you doing? Why don't you eat breakfast? And she would say, my communion is my breakfast. That's how much she was in love with the Lord and how much she offered a spirit of fasting for the good of others. But it wasn't just that. She had a great spirit of generosity and charity, whereby she helped all the people in Denver who were poor. And she herself was poor, but she worked odd jobs to get a little bit of money to help people. She would bring goods around on a little red wagon through the streets of Denver and give them away. And her heart really overflowed with the heart of Christ. She had a great devotion to the Sacred Heart, and that was evidenced in everything that she did.
Were there any surprises that you discovered while you were researching the book?
Well, there's one surprise, I guess, in that the formal canonization causes have to compile a book called a Positio that's submitted to the Pope eventually. gains the title of someone as venerable after he reads through that and approves it. And I was a little surprised that some of the positios are harder to come by than the others, and that the causes are not too eager to share them sometimes, which is a little unfortunate for someone trying to help promote the causes, such as myself and others.
That's kind of interesting. I wonder why that would be, to not share that.
Well, my suspicion is that there are some private details in there, because they have to really dig deep into a person's life when they do these canonization causes. And there might be things that aren't explained quite as well as maybe they should be, or, for an untrained ear to hear or untrained eye to see. Yeah. And so I think that those things need to be contextualized a little bit, and that gets done in other ways, I suppose.
What are some of your hopes, Michael, of people who read this book? What are you hoping they walk away with?
Well, one of my biggest hopes is that we can see the contributions that Black Catholics have made to the life of the Church in this country, the universal Church, and the holiness that exists in the Black Catholic community, which is the greatest of achievements that the human person can come by, as we know.
Well, Michael, thank you so much for being with us. We hope it cools down in Indiana for you. Best of luck with the book.
Thank you.
Where can people find a copy?
osbcatholicbookstore.com or Amazon or wherever else books are sold.
Michael, thanks so much. Stay safe now.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.